of the cheddar cheese in your fridge right now isn't legally allowed to be called cheese. Kraft, Velveeta, Land O'Lakes. Chances are you've bought at least one of these in the last month, and chances are you've never actually read what's printed on the back of the package. Here's the thing. The EFTA has a legal definition of what cheddar cheese actually is. A minimum amount of milk fat. A maximum amount of moisture. Real cultures, real enzymes, real aging. And a lot of what's sold next to it on the shelf, labeled cheese product, cheese food, or pasteurized processed cheese, doesn't have to meet that standard at all. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to read your own cheese label in 10 seconds flat, and which of the 8 products on this list are quietly skipping the real cheese definition entirely. Quick note before we start, almost every product on this list is made by Kraft Heinz. That's not a coincidence, and it's not an accusation, it's just who owns most of the cheese aisle. Keep that in mind as we go. Same handful of ingredients. Same handful of companies. Number 8. Land O'Lakes Yellow American Cheese Slices. This one's the mildest offender on the list, and we're starting here on purpose. Land O'Lakes markets these as an easy substitute for cheddar in sandwiches and burgers, but check the label and the front of the package says pasteurized processed American cheese, not cheddar, not even close to the EFTA's cheddar standard. The ingredient list starts with cultured milk and skim milk, then adds buttermilk, milk fat, and salt, followed by less than 2% of sodium and potassium phosphates and a preservative. Those phosphates are emulsifying salts. They're what let manufacturers melt several cheese batches together into one smooth, sliceable product instead of a crumbly mess. It's a completely legal category under FDA rules. It's just not cheddar. Here's the part that should bother you a little. Nowhere on the front of the package does it say cheddar. But it's shelved right next to the cheddar, priced like cheddar, and marketed to replace cheddar in your grilled cheese sandwich. That's not fraud. That's a labeling gap most shoppers never notice. Number 7 is where the phosphates start doing a lot more work. Number 7. Kraft Cheddar Cheese Product, Pasteurized Prepared. This is the cup version, the kind sold as a cheese sauce or dip base. Read the ingredient panel closely. Because the order matters under FDA labeling rules, ingredients are listed by weight, heaviest first. The very first ingredient is milk. The second is water. Only in third place do you get to actual cheddar cheese, and even then it's parenthetical, meaning it's a sub-ingredient of the bigger blend. After that comes cream, milk protein concentrate, salt, calcium phosphate, sodium citrate, sodium phosphates, more cheese culture, enzymes, lactic acid, a preservative called nisin, and a natto for color. Sodium citrate and the phosphates are doing the same emulsifying job we just talked about, keeping the product smooth and meltable instead of separating into oil and solids. That's standard food chemistry, not a secret. But when water outranks actual cheddar cheese on an ingredient list for something called a cheddar cheese product, that tells you something about what you're really paying for. Remember Land O'Lakes from a second ago? Same trick, different company. Number 6. Velveeta Shreds, Mexican-style cheddar blend. Let's talk about number 6. This one's labeled, in plain text on the bag, as a shredded pasteurized prepared cheese product, Kraft's own wording, not ours. It's built the same way as the loaf version of Velveeta. Milk and skim milk form the base, with milk protein concentrate, whey, and modified food starch added to help it hold shape and shred cleanly, plus a small amount of emulsifying salts to keep it melting smoothly instead of turning oily. Modified food starch isn't dangerous. It's a common thickener found in hundreds of processed foods, but it's also not something you'll find in an ingredient list for real cheddar cheese, which by FDA rule is supposed to be milk, salt, cultures, and enzymes. Nothing more. So why label it cheddar blend at all? Because cheddar is the flavor profile customers expect, even when the product itself doesn't meet the legal definition of cheddar cheese. Not great. Not surprising either. Number 5. Velveeta Cheddar Shreds Original. This is the plain cheddar-flavored version of the same shredded product line, and it's worth separating from number 6 because the two get confused constantly on store shelves. Same category, shredded pasteurized prepared cheese product. Same core approach, milk solids and whey proteins reconstructed with emulsifying salts and starches into something that shreds and melts like natural cheese. Reviewers online have been blunt about the results when this product gets heated. Instead of melting smoothly, it can turn gummy or separate, which is a direct consequence of how much of the fat and protein has been swapped out for starch-based filler. Is any of this illegal? No. Is any of it hidden? Also, no, it's printed right on the bag in plain English. But cheddar shreds on the front and cheese product on the ingredient panel are two very different promises, and most people only ever read the first one. You've probably got a bag of this in your fridge right now. Go check. Number 4. Kraft Easy Cheese Cheddar. Number 4 surprised us, honestly, mostly because of how the ingredients are ordered. This is the aerosol can. According to the label, the first ingredient is whey, followed by canola oil, then milk protein concentrate, and only after that does actual cheddar cheese show up, itself listed as a sub-ingredient made of milk, salt, cheese culture, and enzymes. After the cheddar comes milk again, then a less than 2% catch-all list that includes sodium citrate, sodium phosphate, calcium phosphate, lactic acid, milk fat, sodium alginate, and ascorbic acid preservative, plus annatto and apocarotinol for color. Canola oil in a cheese product is worth pausing on. Real cheddar cheese doesn't contain vegetable oil at all. Its fat comes entirely from milk. Adding oil is a cost and texture choice that lets manufacturers hit a spreadable, sprayable consistency without using more actual dairy fat. But number 3 is where the naming problem gets even harder to miss. Number 3. Velveeta. Sharp cheddar slices. Number 3 is Velveeta again, but this variant puts the word cheddar directly in the product name, Velveeta Sharp Cheddar Pasteurized Recipe Cheese Product Slices, according to the packaging itself. The ingredients start with whey and milk, followed by milk protein concentrate, modified food starch, canola oil, sodium citrate, and gelatin. Gelatin shows up here as a texture and binding agent, helping individual slices hold together and peel apart cleanly instead of tearing. So you've got a product with the word cheddar printed in the name, in a category legally defined by the FDA as cheese product rather than cheese. Built primarily from whey and reconstituted milk proteins rather than aged cheddar itself. It's not hidden. It says pasteurized recipe cheese product right there on the front, in smaller type, under the bigger sharp cheddar branding. Small print. Big difference. Number 2. Velveeta Original, the classic block. The one most people picture when they think of Velveeta at all. According to Kraft Heinz's own published ingredient list, the current formulation starts with skim milk and milk, followed by canola oil, milk protein concentrate, and sodium phosphate, the emulsifying salt doing the heavy lifting here. After that comes modified food starch, whey protein concentrate, maltodextrin, whey, salt, calcium phosphate, lactic acid, ascorbic acid preservative, milk fat, sodium alginate, sodium citrate, enzymes, apocarotinol and annatto for color, cheese culture, and vitamin A palmitate. That's roughly 20 ingredients for something whose real cheddar counterpart legally needs about 4. None of them are secretly dangerous. Sodium phosphate and citrate are common, FDA-approved food additives found across the dairy aisle. But this is also the product that gave the whole cheese product category its cultural nickname, the one people already associate with not quite cheese, precisely because Kraft itself has never been able to legally call it cheese, or even cheese spread, since a 2002 labeling dispute. Which brings us to number 1, the brand that actually got a federal warning over this exact issue. Number 1, Kraft Singles American Cheese. Here's what's actually documented. What's well established is this. Kraft used to label these slices pasteurized processed cheese food, a category that allows more added dairy solids. In 2002, after Kraft changed the recipe to include milk protein concentrate, an ingredient not permitted in that specific labeling category, the FDA required Kraft to rename the product. That's how it became pasteurized prepared cheese product, the name still on the package today. Look at the current ingredient list, and cheddar cheese is actually the very first item, made of cultured milk, salt, and enzymes, exactly as the FDA's cheddar standard requires. But right behind it comes skim milk, milk fat, milk protein concentrate, whey, calcium phosphate, sodium phosphate. modified food starch, and more, all reconstituted together with emulsifying salts into the individually wrapped slice you know. So here's the uncomfortable version of the story. This is a brand that already had a real documented regulatory dispute over its labeling, and the fix was renaming the category, not making it simpler. Real cheddar is still the first ingredient. It's just no longer the whole story. That's the full list. 8 products, 1 legal category. A lot of the same handful of ingredients wearing different names. After going through 8 products built around emulsifying salts and reconstituted milk solids, here's the good news. Real cheddar cheese is still widely available, still affordable, and still sitting on the very same shelf as everything we just covered. Tillamook Sharp Cheddar Block. This one's about as clean as mass-market cheddar gets. According to Tillamook's own published label, the ingredients are cultured milk, salt, enzymes, and annatto for color. That's it, 4 ingredients. And it meets the FDA's actual standard of identity for cheddar cheese. No added starches, no emulsifying salts, no whey protein concentrate standing in for real dairy fat. The white cheddar version drops even the annatto, since there's no coloring needed. Tillamook sells this nationally. Walmart, Kroger, Safeway, Target, most regional chains carry at least the block and shredded versions, if you're checking a label yourself. This is basically the gold standard to compare against. Milk, cultures, enzymes, maybe a coloring agent, nothing else. Cracker Barrel Extra Sharp Cheddar. Now owned by Lactalis, not the restaurant chain of the same name, so don't let the branding confuse you at the store. The block and cracker cut slices list pasteurized milk, cheese culture, salt, enzymes, and annatto, the same short. Clean list as Tillamook, just from a different manufacturer. What's worth noting here is that this sits on shelves right next to actual Kraft-branded cheese product at a similar price point, which is exactly why reading the label matters more than reading the brand name. Cracker Barrel cheese is sold at most major grocery chains and typically priced comparably to, or even less than, the processed alternatives we just spent 20 minutes covering. Kraft Sharp Cheddar Shredded Cheese. Yes, the same company that makes Velveeta also makes an actual legally standard cheddar cheese, which tells you the cheese product category isn't about what Kraft is capable of, it's about what sells at a lower price point with a longer shelf life. The shredded bag's ingredient list starts with real cheddar cheese, pasteurized milk, cheese culture, salt, enzymes, annatto, and then adds potato starch, cellulose powder, and calcium sulfate specifically to prevent the shreds from clumping together in the bag, plus natamycin as a natural mold inhibitor on the surface. Those anti-caking agents are common in shredded cheese generally, cheddar or otherwise, and they don't change the fact that the cheese itself is real, standard-compliant cheddar underneath. The pattern across all 3: milk, cultures, salt, enzymes, maybe a coloring agent, maybe an anti-caking agent for shredded formats. If your ingredient list has phosphates, citrates, alginate, modified food starch, or whey protein concentrate doing the work of holding the product together, you're not looking at cheddar cheese anymore. You're looking at cheese product. Legal. Common. Just not what the front of the package might have you believe. So here's the recap. Kraft singles topped this list, real cheddar as the first ingredient, but reformulated enough to trigger an actual FDA warning back in 2002. Velveeta Original came in at number 2, roughly 20 ingredients deep for something with a 4-ingredient legal alternative sitting 3 feet away on the same shelf. And Velveeta Sharp Cheddar Slices took number 3, putting the word cheddar right in the name while legally belonging to a completely different food category. The fix isn't complicated. Flip the package over. If the front says cheddar, but the fine print says cheese food, cheese product, or pasteurized process, you're not buying what you think you're buying. It's not illegal. It's just not cheddar. Share this with whoever does the grocery shopping at your house, especially if they're loading up on Kraft or Velveeta at Walmart, Costco, or Kroger without ever flipping the package. Save this video too so you've got it pulled up next time you're standing in the dairy aisle actually reading labels instead of guessing. And if reading past the marketing on your food matters to you, subscribe, because next up we're doing the exact same breakdown on America's bacon brands. Some of what's legally allowed to be labeled bacon might surprise you just as much as this did.